Hey, friends of the Events Demystified podcast. We invite you to our brand new series, eVENT About It, a podcast series where we unpack the toughest event challenges as shared by our event community and discuss solutions and what we do differently. Do you have any glorious, successful stories or some event nightmares you'd like to vent about? Share them with us. Anonymously or not, we won't share more than you're comfortable with sharing. This season is also special because for the first time, we're going to have a co-host with us. Megan Martin will join us, and we're super excited about it. Subscribe on Spotify and YouTube to stay tuned to this one-of-a-kind season brought to you by Tree Fan Events, a woman-owned boutique agency leading the charge in integrating tech, AI, and data-driven strategies into event planning.
Well, hello, friends. Welcome to eVENT About It, a new series on the Events Demystified podcast. I'm your host, 𝐂𝐚𝐻𝐫𝐬 Trifan, and this month, as we are celebrating our 50th anniversary, I wanted to do things a bit differently, as I have always done during the month of July when we were celebrating our anniversary month. So I'm super excited because I would like to introduce you not just a brand new series, but a brand new co-host for this brand new series, a featured guest that you have actually met before on episode number 62, Hybrid Events in 2022. Same, but different. Megan Martin, the brainchild behind this new series and my fantastic co-host now. So without further ado, let's get our series started and my co-host added to the show.
Welcome to Events Demystified podcast, where we explore and demystify the world of in-person, virtual, hybrid event AV production and technology by sharing insightful tips, tricks and tactics to make your events a success. This podcast is brought to you by Tree Fan Events, a woman-owned boutique event production agency. And your host is 𝐂𝐚𝐻𝐫𝐬 Trifan, a technical event planner and producer with almost 2 decades of hands-on technical experience in event production.
Yay. Megan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be back.
Well, not only that are you back, but you are now my co-host, and I'm super excited about the opportunity to host this brand new series with you. And I would love to get us started with maybe telling our listeners a little bit about yourself, especially our new listeners that probably didn't get a chance to meet you or get your introduction from episode 62, which feels like it was a century ago.
I know, right? It was basically yesterday, but feels like forever ago. And I'm so glad to be back, glad to be co-hosting with you. So a little bit about myself. I'm Megan Martin, also based in the mountain region. So I live in the beautiful state of Montana. So love that event people are remote and getting together. I've been in the events industry going on almost 20 years now, kind of jumped around from the planner side to supplier side, association events, corporate events. I've kind of done a little bit of everything and excited to event about it because the last few years have been so stressful. I was actually on a call last week with a group of meeting planners that said they just need a support group. Like really, if there was just some place that they could talk and vent and share stories, that would be great. So that's kind of where eVENT About It came from.
Well, I remember you telling me, where were we? We were at eVENT Tech Live, I believe, and we were having dinner, maybe one too many drinks, but that's a different story for another time. And we were just talking about concepts and different things and whatnot. And you mentioned this concept to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is like such a fantastic idea. That is genius. So I just want to thank you off the bat because actually the whole idea, the way this whole series started is because you brought it up. You had this concept and I'm like, let's do it. Let's figure out a way to bring it to Events Demystified podcast. And we're going to make this fun series. And then we opened, this forum where a lot of our community was able to use, and it's still open for anyone that still wants to share their stories. And we wanted to hear hear everything from hero to war stories and everything in between. So we definitely have a few picked that we're going to discuss today. But before we get started with that, I would like to actually get this icebreaker out of the way, because I always like to do some kind of a fun icebreaker. So let's say if you could plan an event for any historical figure, who would it be and why?
Oh my gosh, it's a great question. So one of my all-time like go-to answers for this, or any like historical figure you would want to meet, is always Eleanor Roosevelt. She was such a trailblazer of her time. I mean, the first she basically set the stage for what first ladies were going into the future. She accomplished so much on her own, but really more than anything, she was the master gatherer or connector.
Mm.
She was globally connected. She loved, hosting and getting different groups of people together to have hard conversations. And she just really loved connecting with people in their own ways individually. Like, you could read story after story of where Eleanor Roosevelt will talk to someone and make them feel like they're the only person in the room. And so I would love to plan an Eleanor Roosevelt gathering.
I can tell that you spent some time thinking about this.
I just have spent a lot of time researching and nerding out about Eleanor Roosevelt.
I love it. I did not think about this at all. So I don't even know if I were to answer the same question, who I would pick. I like that you pick somebody that is of like presidential, status, because you think they would have the budget to throw some really lavish parties and events and whatnot. Something that comes to mind for me, I think, would be probably Mother Teresa. But then if I think about it, I don't think she would have any budget to plan an event.
Probably not.
So while I love the idea of like the whole nonprofit and all the work that she's done for the world throughout her lifetime, I don't think that the whole idea of like putting on an event, planning an event that we understand what that seems to be, was on her mind as a way to serve the people. But it does go back to that idea of being a servant. And at the end of the day, we like it or not, we are serving our audiences, or at least that should be the intent, right? So
Right.
when that doesn't go well, I think it's because we probably didn't do that in a servant type of way. So I want to get into our stories today, because if we look at it from that perspective, I think we can, input some of our thoughts on some
Sure.
of those things that were shared with us and see how we would have done things differently. Now, some of the stories, I'll tell you right off the bat, I have no clue, have no experience in those industries. So
The ones we're talking about today are actually super interesting, and like some of them are like, one of them we're going to talk about, it goes into wedding planning, which the scenario we're going to get into is very applicable to corporate and association. It really just comes down to big personalities, but
right.
I've always kind of moonlighted or had side hustles doing weddings or other type of events, mainly to remind myself why I do business events and not social events, and why I really love doing like association and multi-day conferences. And we'll get into why a little bit in the future.
Absolutely. I remember actually, I probably had less than a year where I did dabble a little bit into weddings. And after I've done a few, and I realized how big personalities and especially Bradzillas can turn into like Gonzillas, I
Yeah,
was like, nope, not doing this again.
totally get it. I don't blame you.
So we'll definitely get into one of those. But before I do that, I would love to just a little bit touch on how Events Demystified has gotten to turn 5 and share what an incredible journey it has been. I want to take a moment to reflect on how we all started. And back in high school and college, I worked part-time in radio for about 8 years. And I always dreamed of having my own radio show. But, as life would have it, podcasting became the next best thing. So launching this podcast has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my career, because it has brought not just amazing relationships and friendships, and that includes you, Megan, and so many other friends in the event communities, but it has also opened doors that I never imagined that would be possible, and provided some amazing learning opportunities as well. I mean, some of the guests that I've had and interviewed has shared their tips and expertise, and I was just blown away. I'd be like, I'm a spectator here because I don't even like, it's way above my pay grade right now with this topic, but I'm just gonna pretend like I know what they're talking about and just be like, yep, and then try to sound smart when I ask, the follow-up questions. So of course, I've always strived to deliver excellent content with the highest production value, and that's just because that's who I am, and I can't just do something unless I give it my very best shot. So with all of that being said, let's get on to our event about it. A concept, as I mentioned, that was born over a drink somewhere in Las Vegas. And as Las Vegas has it, what happens in Las Vegas stays.
For sure.
Because that was quite a fun night that we had, and we're going to leave it at that.
It was fun. Your point about the learning, like the learning that you've had, that's why this is like a perfect segment for your podcast that we're launching today. Because I think so many planners have these hero and war stories that we've all been put in like impossible situations and have come out on the other side, maybe a little battered and bruised, but still alive. And there's so much learning opportunity in those challenging times, but us as planners like never want you to see the mess behind the curtain, but we need to talk more about the mess behind the curtain and what we've gone through so that other people don't have to, or they have the tools so when it does happen to them they'll know exactly how to handle that situation.
And I think this right here is the reason why I was so attracted to this idea, because you're right, through the stories that were shared with us, for which actually I want to extend a huge thank you to everyone that has submitted their stories, because your experiences and insights are incredibly valuable, and we love discussing things that we maybe haven't dealt with and just dive into it and give our honest opinion. But to what you just said, Megan, I feel like that's also the reason why sometimes it's hard to share some of those hard stories for different reasons. One of them being there's a lot of liability involved, and we gave the opportunity, if you're one of those people that really wants to get their story out there, to share it anonymously. And I promise you'll see some of those stories that we share, we're not going to mention any names, we're not going to mention any association to anything, and they will know and we will know, but everybody else, unless there's some kind of amazing gurus that can forecast the future, they're not going to know who, what, where we're talking about here. So I want to make sure that that's clear. If you have stories that you want to share, but it's just a matter of like, I don't think I want to share, all the details, all the things, because that will look bad on either the organization or association or whatever it is that you're liable for. We do provide the opportunity to do that completely anonymously.
It's a safe space for broadcasting to the world.
Yes, like we're just gonna try to make it as sensitive as possible, because again, some of the interesting stories that we have received are really fun. Some of them are challenging. Some of them, we're just gonna use some curse words. I'm just gonna tell you right from off the bat, if you're a sensitive ear, maybe this is not the time to listen to the show right now. I try to keep it as PG friendly as possible, but at the same time, I love being expressive and sharing who you are. So if that's something that's going to come out, oh well.
There we go.
There we go. All right. So let's see our first story. This story highlights the importance of setting boundaries and managing especially tricky family dynamics at events. And like you said, Megan, it can be applied across all the other relationships. It doesn't always have to be family, even though, let's be honest, family can get tricky and also can get very messy, right? So it comes from one certified wedding planner, also a wedding designer and business owner with about 30 years of experience. So they didn't just start doing weddings and events. So let's set the scene. The bio parents of the bride were divorced and did not get along at all. both remarried, and none of them could handle their alcohol. This is starting to get good. The wedding was at a luxury hotel on Oahu in Hawaii. And
Ooh,
the
I'd like
father
to
of
see the budget for this wedding.
it sounds like it was a destination wedding, right?
Clearly.
The father of the bride gave a speech that started to turn quite offensive, and I'm going to quote what was sent to us. It started saying, "I saw you come out of your mother's vagina." This is probably, if you're a sound engineer, you have to have the mute button like ready.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which, this is not the end of it, which turned into a huge fight, which moved then into the stairwell. So it's like from, I guess, the reception, this turned into into another fight into the stairwell. They called security, who, basically they said that misbehaved and they threw them out. The planner had to calm the bride. I can only imagine being the bride and getting like embarrassed, by your father. I mean, how
Yeah.
hard that is. And she
Mortifying.
had, mortifying. And then she had to handle the reception at the same time, and the wedding continued. And then she shared some of her learnings, because with some of our stories, we want to, also know what was learned in the process. And this wedding planner, she said, "I tell the wedding party at rehearsal days, at the rehearsal, that the day is about making the couple happy. That is the mission. If anyone does the opposite, they will be removed from the wedding. Egos are not allowed. Personal problems are not welcome, because it's not about them." Okay, so Megan, let's break it down. First,
Ooh,
what is your initial reaction to the story?
my heart is breaking for the bride that her dad would say things like that at her wedding reception. Mortifying. Clearly, this was a very fancy 5-star destination program if everyone went to Hawaii. So, I mean, man, my heart breaks. A couple of things that jumped out at me. One, security had to be called. Two, the planner was dealing with this security issue and this very upset bride and very upset parents, and keeping the wheels on the event running all at the same time. So one person cannot be in 5 places at once.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. That's the job of about like 5 people.
Correct. Yeah, that's a lot. So the first thing was like, how in the world, if we take the relationship part of it out and just look at the planner's role of trying to calm down a very upset bride and father and probably mother, the groom, who knows where he is in this scenario.
Right, we don't
So,
hear anything about the groom. Like, he's like,
right, where's the
"Bye."
groom? He was just out of there. And so I
Like,
think
"I
this is
love
where,
you."
right, he's like, what did I just marry into? This family
Exactly.
is crazy, right? So at first I'm thinking, right, the planner has to be in 5 places at once. This is where relationships from a planner perspective are really, really critical, because in this moment, dealing with the bride, she could delegate some of that to a bridesmaid, a maid of honor, someone
Yeah.
in the wedding party, a close confidant. Be like, get the bride out of here, get her a glass of champagne, calm her down, whatever her vice is, like remove her from the situation, give her a minute to like compose herself.
Yeah.
So that would be one delegation. The other one would be keeping the reception wheels on. So, like grabbing a banquet captain, someone from the venue side to be like, I got a situation. Give me 10 minutes to figure out what's going on. Keep it going. If there's a lull, tell the DJ, the band to just like
Yep.
play
Keep
the
dancing.
stupid shuffle or something, right? Like keep people distracted
Right.
from like what just happened. And then obviously keeping the parents away from each other. And I, as the planner, would then focus on security, making sure that the dad is settled, separated, and then coming up with a game plan so that everyone can enjoy the rest of the evening without any further continued drama, which that may include kicking someone else. Like maybe dad has had enough and it's just time for him to go to bed, and the new wife needs to come along and just be like, okay, we've had our time. Like we've enjoyed the wedding, time to go to bed.
What makes me wonder is if they kind of had an idea that dad is a bit of a, unpredictable canon. Why did they allow him to have a speech? Like,
It's a
why
great
would you
question.
give them the mic? You know what I mean? Like, this is where you're like, yeah, everybody can speak. Not really. We have established a list of people that can say a few words, or just remove that part from the wedding if it's too much of a drama to remove, the father of the bride from the whole speech part, right?
Yeah, I would have maybe, if we knew the parents ahead of time might be a wild card with a microphone, I maybe would have had them give their speech at the rehearsal dinner where there's less
Mm,
people around. The impact of something like that statement is less confound because
yeah.
generally people at the rehearsal are going to know him and maybe cut a little bit more slack as opposed to at the whole wedding. And then saying, only the bridal party, like maid of honor, best man, they're the only
Yep.
ones to speak. And where this kind of I think about where it relates into like the corporate association sort of business event side of it is we all have those wild card executives, right? That
Yes.
even if you say you have 3 minutes to speak, they're going to take 10, or
Yeah.
you have no idea what might come out of their mouth. Finding opportunities for them to feel involved and part of the process where they get their microphone moment, but limiting maybe the impact. Like maybe that's not a keynote opener, introduction. Maybe he's talking at a president's reception or she's speaking at, a small customer gathering as opposed to like the whole event.
Yeah, totally. I mean, setting boundaries around that for sure. One of my friends actually just got married recently. I came from, excuse me, from Mexico just a week ago at the time of this recording. And I love what she did with her wedding. She had a pre wedding mini reception, which was super fun because this was a destination wedding and we had like s'mores on the beach. And
Fun.
this is when most of those speeches were encouraged and allowed. And then the day of the wedding, there were only two people that had speeches. And that was, like you said, the maid of honor. And it was, I think it was also the groom's, what is it called?
Like best
Groom's
man, the best
best of
man.
man, best man, yes. And that was it because nobody wanted to, on one, be bored with very long speeches. Because let me tell you, the night before, we did have those very long speeches, but at least it was, it was casual and nobody, it was more like intimate and casual and an opportunity to say things, but without actually saying those things in front of like an entire crowd and then feel embarrassed because some people, you're right, like they do not have, one, skills to communicate well, and two, boundaries of what should be said and what shouldn't be said when you're
Yep.
talking in front of people. And especially in family situations, that can get tricky. I remember when I got married, it was actually our parents weren't able to join. It was here in US and none of our parents got their visa, and we, because of whatever status, immigration, green card, citizenship, all of that that we needed to go through, I only brought my husband back to meet my parents like a few years later. And when he got to meet my family, that was the first time he got to meet my family. And there was one instance. I come from a large family and we're very loud. My husband comes from a large family, but they're very quiet, completely opposite from what I was raised to be. So as you can tell, I have no problem talking and no problem interrupting because that's just like who's the
Sure.
loudest gets heard, like in a family dynamic like that.
Of
But like
course.
after a day or so of interacting with this loud family of mine, my husband pulls me on the side and he's like, "Hey, honey, I need us to go to a hotel." He couldn't handle the
Look,
crazy.
I've been that family member going to hotels because I was just like, oh my God, these kids are too much. Everything's too much. Because my family's the same way. We're a lot, we're in your face, we're together. And so I've been that. I totally get it. I'm like, I need some white space.
So I feel like knowing that family, going to what the planner did, communicating some ground rules and communicating what are the boundaries. I think that's very, very important. That, highlights the importance of clear communication. And you do that, during the rehearsal, whenever,
Yep.
have everyone together, the bridal party, the people that will be in the wedding. And you want to ensure that that happens, that everybody understands the importance of keeping the main thing be the main thing.
Correct.
Which is, in her case, as she said, it's about them. It's not about you. I don't care about your, little family drama and whatever things that you guys are dealing on the side. This is about them. It's their special day, because this is the one day that they're going to remember. And if you're going to ruin it, they're going to remember that more than they're going to remember all the other good things. So with that, I would love to talk a little bit about the role of alcohol at events,
Oh, I love this one.
because I feel like this is where I personally, struggle, especially when I go to a lot of the corporate events that we attend. And when I'm doing my bodybuilding prep stage, I can have any alcohol. I can touch anything. And then here I am with my glass of water, or maybe, you know what I do? Actually, it's so funny, but I've done this before. I would ask for a sparkling glass of water with the margarita salt rim to pretend like I'm actually drinking a margarita, but actually I have sparkling water with a lime in it. And it's sparkling water because I don't have other options many times. And
Right.
one of my friends, he's the host of Return on Wellness, he's the one that actually always brings this up. It's like, I don't see any non-alcoholic beverages. And if you do have a problem with alcohol, if you did struggle, that has to be an option.
Yeah. And soda is not a replacement for a non-alcoholic drink because myself included, like a lot of times I just don't feel like drinking. Like I don't want to be hungover.
Yeah,
Like a glass of champagne, one glass of wine, maybe. But there are certain events or certain points where I'm just like, I'm not in the mood. I don't want to do it. I've cut back significantly on how much I drink. And like you, especially thinking about like my friends that are having babies and maybe they haven't announced it yet and so they're like awkwardly trying to like get sparkling
right.
water in wine glasses or fake margarita glasses, whatever it may be. And
It does taste actually pretty good if you put a little bit of that same salt in your sparkling water and some lime or lemon, whatever. It's
yeah, I'll do
almost
a
like a
sparkling water with a
margarita.
lime. Totally.
Yes.
It's like a non-alcoholic skinny margarita. I just don't understand where this like even started from. It's like, oh, we're having a social event, so it has to have alcohol, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't know where we got that, and I don't know where the peer pressure to have the alcohol came
Yeah.
from. Like if I say, oh no, I just don't feel like drinking tonight, it doesn't have to be any more than that. I just don't feel like it. Like
But the
I
problem
don't
is, if you do
travel, I
say
don't have a
that,
plan.
if you do not go at the bar, you're missing opportunities. Because let's be honest, like sometimes
Yeah,
deals are getting, you know, done at the bar. Like our conversation was over, going back to, this was
100%.
not during my prep, to be honest, but like I indulged in a glass of wine, you had a glass of wine, and something good came out of that. Now, I'm not saying that alcohol has to be involved, but the reality is a lot of those good conversations are happening post event, post during happy hour, whatever, the conference time agenda was. So then what options do we have if you do want to be part of it and not feel excluded, yet still, not indulge in something that, one, you could have, a bad relationship with alcohol, so you're trying to avoid it, or two, you could be on a health path that doesn't include alcohol, or three, whatever religious reasons you could be, having why alcohol is just, or health reasons, is
Yeah.
not or shouldn't be part of your diet.
Well, I think so many events extend to the hotel bar because we're not getting enough connection or we want to continue the connection that we're getting at the event. So my advice to planners would be like have a conversation with those hotels and say, look, we know people are going to come to your bar. We have the history, we have the data of what they're going to drink. We're actively trying to create an inclusive environment for people maybe who aren't. So, can we set up or move like a lounge area where people don't have to congregate at the
Mm-hmm.
bar so they can be involved, but maybe they're sitting in a chair or a lounge area? Make sure that there's mocktails available at the hotel bar's menu, not just at your banquet room. Because I just also whole note to the industry, like, stop peer pressuring people to drink alcohol. Like, we can all have fun without it. Like,
Yep.
and if we're talking about inclusion in events, that extends to the alcohol piece of this. So if someone doesn't feel like drinking, just be like, great, can I get you a glass of water? Can I get you a mocktail? Like, I think we as an industry too, and as humans, just have to stop this relationship with alcohol. And
Yeah.
meaning we have to have a good time, or there has to be alcohol at a reception. I just don't think
I
that's the case.
I agree. I think I was probably, I don't know, 27 when I had my first drop of alcohol. And let me tell you, I did have fun before I was 27.
Of course.
Alcohol was not part of the equation. And even to this day, I'm a, very light drinker. I know that 2 drinks is my max and I'm good. I don't remember ever being drunk just because, in the back of my mind, that equals, loss of control. That's not something
Mhm.
that I easily can relinquish, right? So to me, it's like, no, but there's people that have a different sensitivity,
Mhm.
and they genetically, you could have a sensitivity to alcohol and you could be drawn to that. So by providing that opportunity for someone that's already sensitive to that, it's almost like you're not being responsible with their health, with your own event, because you don't know where that could take them, right? So anyway, this could be definitely a very long topic. And even going back to those mocktails, some of them could be better than others.
I
um,
mean, for sure.
it was funny because in Mexico, their definition of a skinny margarita was literally a watered down margarita. But there wasn't anything skinny about it, aside from that they were adding like extra ice in the mix.
Okay, yeah, not a skinny margarita, nor really a mocktail if you're just watering down a
No,
margarita.
like, or less carbs, less sugar, none of that. Yeah.
Right.
But anyway, going back to our story, what do you think the planner did well, and what could have been done differently to maybe avoid the situation altogether, or maybe avoid the situation escalating to the point of what it seemed to have become a physical altercation?
Yeah, I think just knowing that the parents don't get along, not giving them an opportunity to speak at all, and maybe just limiting, like, at some point, and we get this in events, you're not going to make everybody happy. At the end of the day, it's the bride's day. And if I knew my parents were crazy like that and didn't get along, I would just feel like you're not allowed to speak. Like, you have to draw a line in the sand somewhere. I think also the planner maybe could have been a little faster on the mute button. Now, I don't know what the AV setup was or what the situation
Yeah.
is, but as soon as that comment was made, that mic would have been cut and just been like, "Thank you so much, Dad. We're moving on," right? And
Yeah.
having an MC
Unless
to
probably when that
control.
happened, he started like throwing punches around, and you're like,
Who knows?
oh,
Right? But, like, the fact that they had security there is a huge plus, like, knowing, like, "Oh, man, this is beyond my control.
yeah.
Like, we gotta get, the bigger guns in here." So, like, calling hotel security to be there. I also think the planner prepping everyone the night before. Now, that was the bridal party. Did that include the parents or not? I don't know. Maybe that conversation should have extended to the
I think that
parents
was
as
her
well.
learnings. That was her learnings to take away from there, because I don't think it happened in the first place. So then next time she's like, okay, this is what we gotta do from here on. One thing I want to add here, I think it's also the responsibility of the bride. If you know that you have a bit of a crazy parent, you need to let your planner know, like, hey,
Yeah,
by the way, just watch for that, because he might throw a few punches if he gets too much alcohol. Like,
yeah.
just be aware of it, right? I think that would have been probably a good help to for the planner, maybe to gauge, hey, should we even have this person be on the mic, or should we even have them like have the bartender watch, have a watch on him. It's like, how many drinks did he have? Like, he's allowed to have 2 drinks or whatever. I don't know how
I was
you
gonna say
handle
have
that,
a
honestly.
babysitter. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, have someone be exactly that sitter, technically.
Like, and maybe the stepmom could have been that. Like it said, both parents were remarried, so like maybe the
Yeah,
stepmom could have helped, or maybe there was a bridesmaid or a groomsman who were kind of like, "Hey, dad's getting a little crazy. Like, maybe
yeah,
we should slow it down."
yeah, exactly. Well, that's a wrap to our first story, and we're gonna get into our second story in a second here. All right. Now that we're over the very intense situation that I feel like we navigated pretty well, what do you think?
I think so. Yeah,
Okay,
for sure.
good. Let's shift gears and discuss a different but I guess equally important issue faced by event professionals. And this story was shared anonymously about a situation that many of us, I feel like, can relate to it. So I'm going to go over this story. At an event, a coworker was sitting at the registration table talking to another team member. A customer walked by and joked about him joining the events team. The coworker replied, "Yeah, I've been demoted." While it wasn't directly tied to the event, I was so angry that he said that in front of our team and to a customer as if event work was beneath him. Following the event, he was spoken to by the director and apologized. That's the story. This incident really struck a chord with the person that submitted it and motivated them to double down on the work they do internally and externally to show that events are a strategic part of the organization and not just an afterthought. So, let's unpack this. I'm trying to honestly understand more the offense behind this, and I do understand the concept of do not make comments that could, make the company look bad in front of a customer. Like, none of that should be discussed in front of a client, in front of a customer. But in your opinion, how should this situation have been handled better, I guess?
For sure. I think, look, running huge programs a lot of times requires everyone stepping in, right? So I was just at InfoComm, Avixa's big annual conference last week, and I noticed someone working registration had a name badge that said accounting. So they're not on the events team, they're working registration. That is very common. It is when it comes to your annual meeting or your big user conference, whatever it is, it's all hands on deck. People from accounting are there, other parts. Like when I was working for one specific association, we had people from the journal who were running speaker ready room, who were writers. They had nothing to do with the events team. So I understand feeling slighted by the comment, but
Mm-hmm.
also like sometimes you just got to let that stuff roll off your back. Now, maybe there's more context to this, that this one particular employee slights events and the event team on a regular basis. And maybe this was the
Mm,
straw that broke the camel's back.
right.
But I think what I took away from this is how amazing is their leadership that they sort of doubled down after they heard this employee say that to put a more emphasis internally about how critical the events are to the success of it. And I don't know if this was a salesperson or
Or
marketing
a
person.
marketing, right?
Yeah, like who knows like what department they come from, but I
Yeah.
think having that education and showing them like when they're on site, they see the planners running every which way, all over, they never really see them or they see them all the time running. And so I think just having that education about how critical the role is, that we're not party planners. It's the age old thing. We're not party planners. We don't just order menus. We don't just put chairs in a room. There's a whole strategy side to it. And if it's a salesperson, even more embarrassing
Right.
for them because like events are so critical to the success of sales. And so for
Yeah.
them to say that, like, I got demoted, like, man, gut punch.
So it feels like in this situation, whoever this person, whatever their position was, they were from the get-go looking at events as some kind of a either waste of time or
Hmm.
something that is not worth investing time, money, resources into. And I think that's where the main problem came from, because there's definitely a lot of strategy. There's definitely a lot of work that goes behind planning an event. And sometimes a lot of people from the outside, they just see the fluff. They just say, oh, you constantly go to fun events, you constantly have fun, you're always going to something that seems like you're traveling to great destinations, you're seeing great places, you're always drinking, or like, that's not really all that it's about. Behind the scenes, there's this crazy amount of talented experts and people that make those wheels run. Without them, you wouldn't have an event that seems effortless, an event that seems like everybody's having fun, everybody's having this amazing experience. And I think that's where, some of this offense was taken, because it's like, you have no idea how hard we have worked for this to actually happen. And I remember was on LinkedIn, there's something about, I don't know if it was Julius or somebody else that was posting about how in so many ways, event professionals and event planners, they have to sell themselves better, especially in front of their CEOs and stakeholders, so they can really bring value to the work that they do. So then there's no question about why should we put resources and money and people behind this event. And that all goes back to ROI, but at the same time, it goes back to how do you sell yourself and your skill set and your talent? Because if you don't, and then your CEO thinks that your admin can do the same job that you're doing, that's not good for anyone, because we know that it takes a specific skill set, but it also takes experience to be able to put on events that matter, events that leave an impact, and also, bring an ROI.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's been my soapbox since coming out of COVID that COVID put planners at the table. You finally got a seat at the table. And then you showed up to the table talking about how many registrants you had and how you were going to do XYZ logistical thing, as opposed to, if we do this, it will move the sales needle. If we do this, it's going to increase our marketing. To your point, it's all driven back to objectives. And if you can't show why it is that you're doing what you're doing and how it helps the company, then your admin can order menus. Your admin can count how many registrants there are. It's like, what are you doing to convert?
Yeah, absolutely. So how can then event professionals effectively communicate the impact of their work to other departments and the type of ROI? And to me, my first thought to answering this is data, analytics. There has to be data. There has to be a way where you track and you can showcase what that looks like. What about you? What do you think about that?
No, I definitely think that's part of it. I think this particular person too, like, yeah, I've been demoted comment. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, really truly demote them then, because running registration, like, you're the
Right.
first person that attendee sees, like, of
Mm-hmm.
any role to be demoted to. That's a pretty big role to be demoted to. And so I would be like, okay, if you really want demotion, I'll go have you be a room checker where you don't get to see or speak to anyone, and I'll just put baby in the corner where you get to do nothing. Or in the future, you don't even get to come to the event. So you don't
Yeah.
get to travel, you don't get to experience it, you get to do nothing. Like, I
Yeah.
would threaten people with bad hotel rooms all the time when I was a planner. Be like, "Oh, you're pissing me off, or you're making it too hard, or whatever." I'll be like, "You get the furthest hotel room for the furthest way, or your meeting rooms are the one all the way down the hallway, down another hallway." Like, obviously, if they're in like accounting or something, you can't do that. But I think
Right.
there's
Because then
ways,
your funds will never come to you.
right? Of course. But I think there's just also not just educating up, but educating across. Because so
Yeah.
many people that, to your point, like, they just don't know all the things
Mm-hmm.
that go in behind the scenes. Like, cVent Connect last week had a drone show. Do we think that their head planner just woke up one day and was like, oh, I think we should have a drone show at the event, and then learned how to fly drones? Like, there's probably months and months and permits and teams
Yeah,
and rehearsals and all of that went into a 5-minute drone show or a
exactly.
30-second drone show. And I think it's just, again, part of putting everything out from behind the curtain. Planners don't want people to know what they're doing because then they know when something didn't go right or wrong. And I think sometimes you have to bring staff along the journey, because if they're not walking in your shoes and they're not feeling your pain, they're not really going to get it. And so, like, across laterally with your colleagues, you have to educate them, but in a different way from how you're necessarily educating, executives on your ROI.
I definitely agree with that. And I think there's also the benefit or the need, you as a planner, to, if you feel undervalued, because it feels like that came a little bit defensive in the sense that they felt undervalued. They felt like they put a lot of work in and it wasn't valued as it should have been. It is, in a way, it should be your responsibility to provide value and to feel confident, and literally to, I would have come right back at that.
Same. Same.
I mean, we're kind of like feisty personalities, right? But I mean, like, I know the value that I bring to this organization, to this event. I know how hard my little ass has worked on this, and I'm not going to allow anyone to just like tarnish it by their little comment because they don't understand the value that this event has or this particular role has for the event itself. Like you said, like, if I'm coming to your event and the first person that I meet at registration table is grumpy, how is that gonna change the energy and what I feel about your event?
Yep. I feel the same way about hotels right now. Hotels are cutting back on valet and luggage and all of these front desk duties, when that's where they need to be investing, because that's the first person I see. If I see some contracted sitting on their phone valet outside of your hotel and that's the first interaction I have, my perception, it might be 5-star autograph collection, I don't care. If your valet or doorman is not greeting me at the level of service that I would expect, the rest of the trip now has that layer of cloud over the
Yeah.
entire thing. And I feel registration is the same. Like, that's the first interaction someone has with you. As soon as they get to that venue, I mean, there's many, many touch points before they get to the venue, but like that human to human contact, registration is that first touch point. So actually, like, the fact that this person got put at registration should be an honor. Because if not, like I said, I'll truly demote you and put you in a back room running something where you don't interact with anybody and you sit behind a desk doing nothing all day.
Yeah, exactly. We have all these boxes that need to be filled with swag. How about you do that job next time?
Yep, exactly. Go unpack all the boxes in the staff room. Oh no, you're setting up all the computers for the staff.
Right.
I will put you in a room away from everyone else, where working at registration should be an honorable position in my eyes.
Well, anything else we want to add to this story? I feel like we covered most of, what we thought that it should be said about it before we move into our third and last story today.
No, I think we covered. I think there's a lot more to that story on the planner and the person making
Right.
the joke side. But I think it really just comes down to education, educating across your organization and educating up on the ROI that events bring and the value you bring as a planner.
All right. Well, I feel like we did a good job. Let's move into our third story.
Here we
Before we do
go.
that, this podcast wouldn't be possible without our sponsor. Before we move any further, I wanted to give a quick shout out to our main sponsor, Trifan Events, which is a boutique event planning and production agency that will come alongside you, offering personalized event planning and technical support, strategic event design, production and technology management, and flawless execution for live, virtual, and hybrid events. The team at Trifan Events is passionate about planning and producing event experiences that get people involved with true moments of interaction, engagement, and co-creation, while offering white glove treatment throughout the entire planning process, enabling you to reach your event goals with the use of creativity, production tools, and event technology. To find out how Trifan Events can plan and produce your event become memorable, go to trifanevents.com. All right, our third and last story for today, it was brought to us by Bridget, an award-winning event producer and founder of Creative Canvas Productions, and she was okay with us sharing that on the air. And here's what happened at their last, I guess, Ignite Charlotte live streaming event. Our last Ignite Charlotte live streaming event was going extremely well up until the power on the left side of the venue went out. We had equipment plugged in on both sides of the venue, obviously, but our main switcher and two show computers were blown out as a result of the electrical power surge. We had surge protectors, but that didn't save us, and there wasn't a way to restore the power or move all the equipment over to the few remaining outlets on the other side. We engaged with our online audience and moved them into multiple 5-minute Zoom breakout sessions while they adjusted to our plan C. So by now they're into plan C, right?
Oh, wow.
I can only imagine the stress this is like going
Like I'm
on.
sweating reading
Right?
this. This is so much.
A few people dropped off, but several stayed and cheered us on through the challenge. Oh gosh, those technical challenges, right? We checked in with our A speakers and told them our plan, used the one remaining laptop as our all-in-one switching station. Oh my goodness. While another laptop connected to the confidence monitor and would show their time slides. Some speakers really struggled to rebound from the challenge that we were having, but the majority of the speakers delivered their 5-minute talk using 15-minute advancing slides and did an outstanding job. And then her lesson learned from this entire debacle was bring more equipment than you think you need. Even if you've done this specific virtual event in the past, you can control electrical surges in an old building with faulty wiring. The venue owner told us about the faulty wiring after the fact and refunded some of our money. All right, so Megan, I know we both done virtual events, hybrid events, back to virtual and then back to hybrid and in person. What are your thoughts on how Bridget and her team handled the situation? And I have some thoughts myself too.
I mean, impressive recovery that she was on plan C and not D, E, F, or Z, because my Lord. I think this is sort of a tangent, but like this is why COVID was so hard for meeting planners because we're all control freaks. And when it's in person, if I need extra chairs and the venue's not taking long enough, the unions will kill me for saying this, but I'm just going to go find chairs and put them in a room. If
Right.
I'm running a virtual meeting and the speaker's internet goes down, or one time I had a speaker fall asleep in the middle of a session, I can't physically be there to fix their internet or their mic or wake them up,
Yeah.
like we just can't do those things. So I feel for her. I think the biggest takeaway from this is you knew it was an old building. Like knowing your venue limitations is
Yeah.
half the battle of producing hybrid. Even if it's like new and shiny, I still ask a lot of questions about the back end because if
Yeah.
there aren't enough plugs or the internet's not strong enough, and you know that kind of going into it, you can prepare and bring the extra equipment. If you know the venue's really old and you know they probably haven't upkept on the tech, then I'm bringing even extra and I'm having vendors on standby. Like I might need
Yeah.
another switcher. We might need to bring in power.
Absolutely. I used to work into an old venue, a historical venue back in Portland, Oregon. And to this point, it is a historical building. And there isn't much that you can do with historical buildings. The infrastructure, it is what it is. I mean, it was so outdated that you knew that if you press on this light switch, the elevator would stop, like the service elevator, you stop. So you literally had like this huge sign, do not turn on the switch. So there's a little bit of
Hilarious.
tribal knowledge that obviously goes into those buildings.
Right.
And we were the in-house, so we got to do events there a lot. So we kind of learned all the tricks. We knew which, light switch not to touch. We also always brought in additional power. Like literally, we had a generator outside of the venue and pull power through the windows for any event that was a high stake event. Anything that we knew that the venue will not be able to sustain, especially if there's like high loads with a lot of lighting that require a lot of ampage, or large projectors. We did projection mapping in there a whole lot, so that required a lot of wattage, and we didn't
Mhm.
have those circuits available to us, right? But again, that goes back to a bit of like tribal knowledge, knowing that this is a old building, knowing that old building by default, they do not have the infrastructure, they do not have the circuits that your event might require. So having additional power, I mean, power surges are great, but they're not going to carry your event, especially
Yeah.
in the case where you do not know if that will ever come back, right? So
Mhm.
I feel the pain. I have been through, especially during COVID, through those live streams where something goes down on some end and you're trying to troubleshoot the heck out of it. And every minute feels like 100 hours, and your
Yep.
sweat comes down like nobody's business. And your heart rate has gone to 170, and you gotta make it, like literally you're shaking because you're trying to make it work, but
Absolutely.
there's so many things out of your control. So to Bridget's team, I feel like they really handle it well. They quickly pivoted and adapted. What strategies would you recommend for maintaining audience engagement during such disruptions? Because that's another thing, right? It's like anything that feels like a minute here for an online audience, you're going to lose them. They're not going to be there forever. They're not going to wait there for 50 minutes until you get back online.
I think this is where the biggest contingency plan comes into me, because if it wasn't the power, it could have been something else. It could have been a speaker who didn't show up. Like there's always
Yeah.
going to be something that happens. You can't prepare for everything, nor could she have prepared that half the building was not going to come back on after a power surge. So I think having contingency plans for content is equally as important as logistical contingency plans. That maybe there's a pre-recorded video that your tech team could easily just throw up there,
Mm-hmm.
or we're going to replay a talk that was from last year that was the most rated. Like there's a ton, like every organization has a ton of canned stuff, whether it's commercials or short videos or long form talks. I think you could just stack the deck and have a folder of videos ready to go. And also like be transparent with your audience, right? So like obviously they were going through something. Like we don't always have to like cover it up, like the building's on fire and I'm trying to throw a sheet over it so no one knows it's on fire. Like that's
Right.
ridiculous. Instead, just be like, we know the building's on fire. It's totally fine. We're handling it. Security's on
I
top
mean,
of
maybe
it.
get the people out if they're in the
Well,
building.
of course, right? Like we're getting everyone out of the building. Everyone knows like we're having a technical difficulty. Like I think people give you a lot more grace when you're transparent about it. Like half the power is out in this building, so we are going to take a quick break. Here's some additional new content for you to watch, while we're getting back online, kind of a thing, as opposed to saying nothing or doing nothing and leaving people in the dark. Then I'm definitely going to leave, because I'm like, amateur hour. What are you guys even doing? As opposed to saying,
Yeah.
shit's going down at the venue. We are going to need a minute. Here's some entertainment in the process.
Definitely a good strategy there. Something that we've learned over COVID after doing so many of those live streams, broadcasts, virtual events, digital events, whatever you want to call it. At this point, I don't even know how many names we named the same thing. We've learned the importance of having a remote team that is
Mm.
not plugged into your main wiring, into your main internet, that can pick up the lift or can even run things remotely, so that you're not just relying, especially if you're in this old venue and you know that there could be some problems. One, not just power, but also internet, the infrastructure. I'm surprised that they had internet in the first place, right? Most of those venues, they would struggle with that first and foremost. Maybe they had a backup and that was never an issue. But if you know that this is going to potentially be a problem, if you've already made your ABCD contingency plans, I think having a remote team be part of this contingency plan is very important. And we have set those things in place. Like many times when I produce events and I live stream events, I might be here in the office carrying one part of the stream, but I have a backup in a completely different remote office that carries the stream just as well. So if something happens to my internet, to my power, there's always someone that can pick it up, right? So I've done events this way from hotel rooms, and I am at the mercy of the bandwidth that they give me, even though they say, oh, it's fantastic, you pay for the upgraded version. Let me tell you, it's not always the case. So I had to rely on my remote team. It's like, hey, pick up the stream because I'm dealing with things, or I would have them be ready with that canned content or whatever it is, or engage with the audience, be in the chat, assure them that will back, or be in the in the waiting room with the speakers, because the speakers are also if those speakers had 5-minute talks and you're dealing with a 15-minute situation, you had to skip 3 speakers at this point, right? It's like you're gonna have to figure out how do you make sure those people still get their content out, or maybe they have to send pre-recorded content post-event, or you're gonna have to extend your event. Like something's gonna have to happen, right? And playing through those scenarios through technical rehearsals where you're able to move between teams, A team, B team, that is very important. And it's something that, again, you learn by doing, and you learn because you might have been in this type of situation before, even though it might not have been the power going down, but who knows what else went down, right? Like a mouse ate your Cat 5 and now you're like, my internet went down and I have no idea why.
It could be anything, and I
Yes.
think the biggest takeaway is like thinking about having remote backup, someone who's not at the venue who can pick up, and then also not just having logistical contingency, but content contingencies. It's the value of having a host who can go up there and tap dance and, do the shiny thing over here so we
Do a
don't see what's
magic
happening
show,
over there.
something.
Right. Or like replaying old content from another event or a past webinar or anything. We all have it. It's just when you don't have to scramble for those contingency plans, it looks like it maybe was a happy accident as opposed to, oh no, they're doing this on purpose because something's going on.
Yeah, and then to her point of the importance of bringing more equipment than you think you need, I absolutely agree with that. I've been at events where I've actually traveled to events and I had to bring a crew in, and we're bringing trucks, and you always have extras because you never know. There's always one extra breakout that's being thrown in your lap. There's always one extra laptop that's needed at the podium. There's always 1, 3, 4 more microphones than they thought they needed. There's always equipment that needs to be added to your original scope of order. And there's 2 options. 1, you either have it. 2, you rent it from the in-house, which many times happens to be very, 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 very expensive because we know who we're dealing in some of those in-houses. Or 3, you are prepared. And let me tell you, nothing saves the day more than when you are the hero, when you can say, no problem, we've got you, right? Because event planners, when they're hit with those changes, they feel embarrassed themselves that they have to change the order. Like many times I'd be like, they would apologize a million times over because like the client, or I don't know, the CEO just added this extra TV or panel, or I don't know whatever it was that was definitely not part of the initial plan, right? Obviously there's a good process to know how to ask the right questions, especially from the AV production point of view, to be able to drill through all the scenarios, to all the changes that might happen. But last minute changes, they're inevitable. So yes, bringing more equipment is obviously very, very important. Having backup plans, running through those tests through technical rehearsals to make sure that those backup plans are implemented in a timely fashion, having DMC if you're doing a virtual event or a live stream, having content that you can easily pull on to be able to play almost like a commercial break.
Yep.
What else am I? And then dealing with, let's talk about the venue itself. Like sometimes you get into a venue and, like she said, it sounded like they were hiding the fact that they've got faulty wiring.
A little bit. I think that's why she got some of her money back or refunded all of her money.
Yeah, so it sounds like sometimes you might be walking into a situation and you deal with people that are untrustworthy. They might be hiding things, or they might not tell you that, hey, by the way, at the day of your event, we have this major construction going on right next door. Have you been
Or
in those
hey, by the
situations
way,
before?
we booked a cheerleading competition, so
Yes.
there's going to be 12-year-old cheerleaders running around this hotel the entire time your executive meeting is
Pumping
going on.
loud music because they gotta do their routine, jumping on top of each other and it's just above your ballroom or something, right?
Yep.
Oh
All the
man.
things. But
Yeah,
I will
so
say Bridget it sounds like she had great contingency plans. I think given the scenario, I don't know that I would have changed much. I probably would have done the same thing Bridget did. And I'm pretty impressed with what she had to go through and what she was able to pull together to only lose a handful, or she
yeah,
said some of the virtual attendees and not all, is
yeah.
pretty impressive. So bravo to Bridget. I think she handled it really well.
Absolutely. So kudos to Bridget. Thank you so much for sharing this story with us. You handle it really, really well. We are proud of you and we appreciate you bringing this scenario to us. And I think with that, this brings us to a wrap.
It's crazy. Flew by.
Flew by. I mean, I was super, engaged with those stories. I feel like you felt the same way.
Yeah, I think it's scenarios that we've all have been through one way or another. Lots of great learning takeaways from each three of these. So thank you guys for submitting. Those were great ways to kick off Event About It.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your insights. All of this have definitely made this content possible
Yeah.
for our first episode. But wait. We've got quite a few more coming down the pipeline. So we want to hear from you. If you do have a challenging or interesting event story that you like to share with us and would like us to dissect it and talk about it in our next episodes, please submit it to us. Your story could really help, like Megan said in the beginning, fellow event professionals learn and grow, and we would love to feature it. And with that, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube and Spotify. Also follow our LinkedIn page and Instagram for the latest updates, behind the scenes content and whatnot. And I will make sure to include the submission form in the episode notes so you can easily access it and share your stories. I will say 2 of those podcast episodes will be recorded, but we will have 2 live ones. And during those live episodes, we would love for you to put those on the calendar. Let me look at the dates really quick. I want to make sure that I'm throwing the right dates. It will be July 19 and July 26, and we have those listed on the YouTube page as well as the LinkedIn page. And we're going to stream it live. So some of those stories will come from the chat. Some of those stories will be very much ad hoc, and we're going to have fun with it. So I'm super excited about that. So put that on your calendar. Yep. Make sure that you keep that in mind. I do have to mention, though, the elephant in the room again, talking about technical difficulties.
All day. I can't fix it. I'm going to fix my camera before next time. My God, it's even driving me insane. I got to fix it for the next one.
It's not that we didn't try, but at one point we were like, just screw this. We're just going to run with it. And we're going to apologize at the end.
Yeah. Well, I promise all audience fans that I will get my camera fixed before the next episode.
Well, thank you so much, Megan, for co-hosting this with me. This was a lot of fun. I can't wait to record our next one. And for everyone that has been listening, We definitely look forward to hearing more of your amazing stories. And until next time, stay inspired, keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in events.
Thank you for listening to the Events Demystified podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please take a moment to review it, rate it, and share it with other event professionals that could benefit from it. Connect with us on social at Events Demystified Podcast. We would love to hear from you and what you're up to. If you'd like to learn more about 3Fan Event services and find out if we're a good fit in supporting your event, can we help your event be successful with a 20-minute free consultation? Link in the episode's notes. Thanks for tuning in.
Over the past 5 years, we've poured our hearts into the Events Demystified podcast, exploring the intersections of audiovisual technology, AI innovations, and the crucial role of mental and physical wellness in event production. We've also shined a light on the talented women working behind the scenes in AV. As we plan to deepen our impact and reach more listeners like you, we need your help to achieve this. Listen, tune in to any Events Demystified episode on Spotify. Hit the follow button on Spotify to keep up with our latest episodes and updates. Review, rate, give us a 5-star rating on Spotify. Share, pass your favorite episode along to 2 friends who love crafting unforgettable events. Win. By following these steps, you'll be entered to win a $50 Amex gift card. Join us, share your voice, and let's demystify event experiences together.